Hello everyone, a very good morning and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep. Welcome to our daily Hindu analysis. Before we begin, as we announced yesterday, our Target Prelims 2023 crash course has begun from yesterday. This year we have planned a very holistic and comprehensive crash course to help you prepare for the upcoming prelims. We have designed the course into 4 phases and the first phase has started yesterday live on our YouTube channel. The first phase includes a series of strategy sessions to help you understand how you can prepare for prelims topics, especially current affairs topics, in the next 3 months. So yesterday we had the first session and today we are going to have the second session. Please take a look at the schedule here from 1st March to 6th March. Try and attend all these sessions, watch these videos. Today evening at 8 p.m. I shall be taking a session on how to prepare for current affairs in the next 90 days. So attend these sessions without fail. It's going to be immensely helpful. And more importantly, we are going to take all your questions live during this session. So I hope to see you in tonight's session. Now, let's take a look at the topics we are going to discuss today and then immediately get started with the analysis of the Hindu newspaper. I have chosen 4 important articles which require an elaborate analysis. There are a couple of articles from page number 1 and page number 12. We also have an editorial and an important column from page number 6. These articles cover a number of subjects and they're all very relevant for your prelims and mains. So we need to carry out a thorough analysis of these articles, spend more time on these topics and comprehensively understand all these topics. Then in the end, we shall take a look at a few smaller articles which are specifically important for your prelims, and we also have a heads up section for today. So these are the important discussions we are going to have, and I assure you, if you stay with me for the next 1 hour, you don't have to go back and read the newspaper. I'll try to cover all the important articles, that too in detail. It will be comprehensive and it will help you thoroughly revise and complete these topics. You don't have to go back and read the newspapers again. In return, all you have to do is support us by liking the video. Let's see how many likes you can get us on this video. Comment below as well and share these videos with other aspirants. Now let's start with the first article from page number 1. India has asked the help of G20 countries to extradite fugitive economic offenders and to bring them to justice. As you know, India currently holds the G20 presidency. So we are arranging a lot of meetings, foreign minister meetings, finance minister meetings, meetings between the Sherpas, central bank governors. There are different working groups which are meeting over the last few weeks. These meetings will continue through this year before the final G20 summit happens in September 2023. So India is leading all these discussions and negotiations. So we recently hosted the first anti-corruption working group under the G20. So during these discussions, yesterday India has pointed out that we need the help of all the G20 members to tackle corruption, money laundering, and other economic offenses which are posing a serious threat. Many of these economic offenses, they are not just an economic threat, they also pose a national security threat. Especially in the context of India, we have seen many fugitive economic offenders in the recent past. You would have heard about scandals and frauds involving the likes of high net worth individuals such as Vijay Mallya, Nirav Modi, Mehul Choksky, Lalit Modi and the others. These high profile individuals, high net worth individuals, they have duped Indian banks, they have not repaid the loans they had borrowed, right? They have taken away the hard-earned money of the public. They have looted the banks and financial institutions of India. They have committed frauds, economic frauds. These cases involve a money laundering angle as well. And hence, they have committed a serious criminal offense against the country. And these fugitives, they have run away from the country, they have hidden themselves in foreign countries, and they refuse to cooperate. They refuse to come back and they refuse to face the courts. So as a result, India has declared them as fugitive economic offenders. Essentially, these are offenders who have broken economic laws, who have committed criminal economic offenses, and they have run away from the country. They are fugitives. They're not facing the law. They're not cooperating. They're not facing arrest. They've run away from the country. They're outside our jurisdiction, and hence they've been declared as fugitives. So India has sought the help of the G20 countries to arrest and extradite such fugitive economic offenders. India has said G20 is the right platform for this because G20 is the primary group to deal with all financial and economic issues that are facing the world. So India's view is that G20 is the right platform to tackle corruption, money laundering, and other economic offenses. Hence, it has called upon the G20 members to help each other to trace and arrest these fugitive economic offenders. India has also asked the help of these countries to recover the assets, to confiscate the proceeds of their crime, which are present both domestically and abroad, so that these offenders can be punished financially as well, which could force them to return back to their countries. So we've asked the G20 countries to work together to speed up the extradition process and as well as recovery of assets and confiscation of proceeds of crime so that these economic offenders can be brought to justice. So let's understand a little more about this topic by talking about the Fugitive Economic Offenders Act of 2018. Over the last few years, many of these scandals broke out. These high-profile individuals like Vijay Mallya, Lalit Modi and the others, they had duped Indian banks, they had borrowed heavy loans, fraudulent loans. They didn't repay the loans on time and they had committed frauds and scandals. These cases involved a money laundering angle as well, and eventually they fled the country. So as these frauds and offenses took a hit on India's banking system, right, the non-performing assets in India's banking system increased significantly. It increased to dangerous levels, which could have destabilized the Indian economy. So to ensure that these offenders are held accountable, India enacted a law called the Fugitive Economic Offenders Act in 2018. It was passed by the Parliament, the President's assent was also given immediately, and the law came into force. So under this law, those economic offenders who have run away from India, those who are hiding in other countries, those who are not cooperating, those who are refusing to face the law of the land, they can be declared as fugitive economic offenders. Is that clear? So what's the process here? Through what process can one declare an individual as a fugitive economic offender? This is something you should know with regard to prelims. See, under the Act, the conditions for declaring a fugitive economic offender has been clearly mentioned. If an individual faces an arrest warrant for scheduled economic offences in the country where the value of the offence or the fraud is more than 100 crore rupees, in such high value economic offences, if an arrest warrant has been issued and if this individual has left the country and is refusing to return to face prosecution and justice, under these circumstances, a special court under the Prevention of Money Laundering Act can declare this individual as a fugitive economic offender. So the power to declare an individual as a fugitive economic offender lies with the special courts that have been set up under the PMLA, the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. This is India's primary legal weapon to fight money laundering. This is how India has fulfilled its obligations to FATF, the Financial Action Task Force, which is a global intergovernmental body that tackles money laundering and terror financing. As per FATF recommendations, India has introduced a national law, that is the PMLA, to tackle money laundering. See, money laundering is one type of economic offense. It's one of the most serious economic offenses. In money laundering, illegally acquired wealth is converted to legal wealth. Money laundering is basically a process through which black money is converted into white. The wealth that is generated through illegal sources, illegal activities, such as corruption, organized crime, etc., and even tax evasion, this wealth is converted into legal wealth. The black money essentially becomes white. And this process of money laundering is not just an economic risk for the stability of the nation, it is also a national security risk. Because money laundering is closely linked with organized crime, with Hawala networks. It has links with terrorist financing. And as a result, money laundering is a national security threat as well. So that is why we strictly follow the recommendations of Financial Action Task Force, and we have enacted the PMLA, the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. Under this law, under the PMLA, we have declared money laundering as a criminal offense as recommended by FATF. Under this law, the proceeds of the crime, that is, whatever financial assets and property has been procured by the accused through money laundering, these proceeds, these assets, financial assets, they can be confiscated by the authorities and it can be attached to the ongoing case. This provision has been clearly provided for under the PMLA, which is again in line with the recommendations of FATF. Whatever financial assets, properties that these accused people have procured through money laundering, this is called proceeds of crime. These assets and properties can be seized, it can be confiscated by the authorities, such as the Enforcement Directorate. The ED or Enforcement Directorate is the law enforcement agency which is enforcing the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. So in such cases where money laundering is involved, the ED can confiscate these assets and properties. It can attach them to the ongoing case. So to try these cases, to take these cases for prosecution, special courts are set up under PMLA. This special court has the authority to declare an accused as a fugitive economic offender if this accused has run away from the country. If there is an arrest warrant against him for a scheduled criminal offense such as money laundering, where the value of the fraud is more than 100 crore rupees, and if this person has run away from the country and if he is refusing to return, then the special court can declare this individual as a fugitive economic offender. So there are other economic offenses as well. It's not just money laundering. Other economic criminal offenses related to Benami Properties Transactions Act, Companies Act, other economic crimes and frauds defined under Indian Penal Code, the Criminal Procedure Code. All these provisions can lead to a person being declared as a fugitive economic offender if these two conditions are met. Alright, so this includes corruption as well, this includes tax evasion, banking frauds, non-repayment of loans, where large volume loans have been taken and it's not been paid back to the banks. These kind of economic offenses, they threaten the very stability, the economic stability of the nation. So that is why it's very important to pursue these fugitive economic offenders. And of course, you need global cooperation, right? Our jurisdiction will be limited to Indian territory. If these offenders are hiding in foreign countries, we need their assistance in arresting them and in extraditing them back to India. We also need their assistance to confiscate their assets and proceeds of crime present abroad. Because these offenders will not only have assets in India, they will have procured assets abroad as well. So you will have to confiscate those proceeds of crime and attach them to the ongoing case. So you can put a financial cost on these economic fugitives that could force them to return to India and face the law of the land and face prosecution and justice. So that is the argument India has made during the first anti-corruption working group discussions. India has said that Enforcement Directorate has confiscated around $180 billion worth of proceeds of crime, and it has already transferred these assets to banks and financial institutions which had incurred massive losses to the tune of $272 billion. These high net worth individuals who had committed these crimes, right? They had caused massive losses to our banks to the tune of $272 billion. The non-performing assets of these banks was extremely high. It could have destabilized the banking system and the financial stability of the country. So Enforcement Directorate has confiscated a lot of these assets and proceeds of crime. It has liquidated these assets worth around $180 billion. It has auctioned most of these assets, and part of the money has been returned to the banks so that at least they can recover the losses they have suffered. So now we are asking for more help from the G20 countries so that we can extradite these fugitive economic offenders, bring them back to India to make them face justice. So if they cooperate, if they help us in confiscating the proceeds of crime, both in India and abroad, if they help us in attaching those assets to the ongoing cases, it will act as a disincentive for these offenders to run away from the country. It might even push them to return to the country to face the law. All right? So India has said that G20 is the right platform for this. It's the primary platform for global economic cooperation. So this is the right platform to tackle corruption, money laundering, and other economic offenses. So that is why India has brought up this argument. All right? So this is the reason why the topic is very important, both for prelims and mains. You can expect a mains question on Fugitive Economic Offenders Act. You can expect a mains question on these high-profile economic scandals that have hit the country, how it affects India and how India is dealing with them. Also, with regard to the basic facts that we discussed, you can expect prelims questions. Understood? So that is why this topic is very, very important. Now let's move on to the next article. Let's look at an editorial from page number 6 related to Indian polity. This article brings out the frequent standoff and conflict that we witnessed between the office of the governor and the office of the chief ministers. This has become a recurring feature in India's polity. With regard to center-state relations, with regard to India's federal structure, one of the most pressing issues is the conflict between the governor and the state government. States and the ruling parties at state level, they often accuse the ruling party at the center of misusing the office of the governor. The governor is seen as an agent of the center who is playing a political role interfering with the state administration, interfering with the powers and the authority of the state government, including the chief minister and the council of ministers. This has become a recurring theme over the last many years, and there is one recent development which brings up this issue again. So the editorial is arguing that in this standoff between the governors and the chief ministers, both the constitutional authorities, they need to learn to respect their constitutional boundaries. This is the argument the editorial is making. There is a specific issue. We are going to discuss that. There is a recent issue which has happened in Punjab. That is why this topic is in news. In relation to this incident, the editorial is arguing that since the standoff between governors and state governments has increased, specifically between governor and the office of the chief minister, it's asking both the constitutional authorities to respect their constitutional boundaries, to not breach the constitutional boundaries and enter the domain of the other. Now let's understand what is this incident in Punjab? Why is this topic in news? Let's look at the constitutional provisions related to it. All right? In Punjab, the budget is about to be presented. The budget session is supposed to be convened. So the state government, headed by Chief Minister Bhagwant Mann, had recommended to the governor to call for the budget session, to convene the budget session, to convene the assembly. This power lies with the governor, and the governor acts on the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers headed by the Chief Minister. But the governor, Banwarilal Purohit, he refused to convene the budget session. He said, I'm not going to call the budget session because the reason, the justification given was that the Chief Minister is not cooperating. He is not responding to the queries that I have raised. See, recently, the Punjab state government, which is ruled by the Aam Aadmi Party, had sent a few officials to Singapore on a training exercise. This foreign visit was questioned by the governor. The governor said this is a wasteful expenditure. So the governor stepped into the domain of the executive. He asked for more reports and additional information from the chief minister regarding why these officials and ministers were sent to Singapore. Why should taxpayers' money be used to send officials and ministers abroad? What's the reason? What's the purpose? Does it really serve any useful purpose? So the governor, under his constitutional powers, he had sought additional information regarding this from the chief minister. But the chief minister, Bhagwant Mann, did not respond. He did not reply to the governor. He did not share any additional information. Based on this, the governor refused to convene the budget session when the chief minister advised the governor to call for the budget session. This led to a standoff and the Punjab state government approached the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, which looked into the case, it advised both the governor and the chief minister to respect their constitutional office, to behave like mature authorities, constitutional authorities, display mature statesmanship, and to resolve their differences, because you cannot allow your personal differences and political rivalries to come in between and lead to the breach of constitutional boundaries. But eventually the Supreme Court need not carry out a judicial intervention in the matter because the issue has been resolved already. The governor has already said that the budget session has been convened for tomorrow. Tomorrow, the 3rd of March, the budget session will be summoned. So the governor has gone ahead, he has lifted his objection and he has convened and summoned the Punjab State Assembly. So the Supreme Court need not intervene here because the state government had approached the Supreme Court specifically for this, to push for summoning the assembly for the budget session. So now the governor has agreed, so the judiciary need not intervene. But while looking at the case, the Supreme Court made one very important observation that such high constitutional offices, such as the office of the governor, office of the chief minister, they need to respect their constitutional boundaries. Now let's take a look at what the Constitution says with regard to these issues. With regard to convening, summoning the House, the powers of the governor with that regard. To what extent is the governor bound by the advice of the Council of Ministers? What's the powers of the chief minister? What's the duty and obligation of the chief minister with regard to the governor's office? Let's take a look at this constitutional position. This is going to be very, very important for your prelims and also for your mains. See, in the Indian Constitution, you have Article 174 under the State Executive chapter, which deals with the governor's power to summon the House. The article reads that the governor, from time to time, shall summon the House of each of the legislature to meet at such a time and place as he thinks fit, while ensuring that the gap between each session should not be more than 6 months. And the governor also has the powers to prorogue the House, to dissolve the House as well, to dissolve the Legislative Assembly if its term or period expires, or if the ruling party loses majority, right? The governor has the powers to dissolve the Legislative Assembly. He can prorogue the House as well after the session ends, and before the session, the governor convenes and summons the session. Now, the article says the governor can make these decisions as he thinks fit. However, please note, this is not a discretionary power. The article says that the governor can decide on these issues as he thinks fit. But this is not a discretionary power. This was made very clear by the Supreme Court in the Nabam Rabia case of 2016. Because the governor is a nominal authority. The governor is not the real executive. The real executive is the Council of Ministers, headed by the Chief Minister of the state. They are the elected authorities. The governor is a nominal authority, holding a nominal position. So this is not a discretionary power of the governor. Understood? Please remember this. The governor cannot decide when to summon, when to prorogue, when to dissolve. This is not an entirely discretionary power. Here the governor is bound by the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers, which is headed by the Chief Minister. So if the Chief Minister advises to the governor that please summon the House for a budget session, or prorogue the ongoing session, or dissolve the assembly itself, then the governor is bound to follow it. He cannot refuse. It's not a discretionary power that he enjoys here. Understood? So when the Punjab governor refused to convene the budget session by citing his personal differences with the chief minister, he was actually in breach of his constitutional responsibilities. The governor was wrong on this ground. He cannot refuse to convene the session when advised by the Council of Ministers headed by the CM. He is bound to do it. It is his constitutional duty, constitutional obligation. Understood? Now take a small exercise, a very small assignment, so that you can go back and read a little bit. Can you find out which article is this? which article says that the governor of a state is bound by the aid and advice of Council of Ministers headed by the Chief Minister. There is a specific provision for this under the state executive. So figure out which article is this and post the name of the article, the number of the article in the comment section below. Understood? So the constitutional position is very, very clear with regard to the powers of the governor. The powers of the governor to summon the house to prorogue, dissolve is very limited. It's not a discretionary power. He is bound by the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. However, even the Chief Minister of Punjab was breaching his constitutional duty. Both are at fault, not just the governor, even the Chief Minister was at fault. Because Article 167 places a set of duties on the Chief Minister with regard to furnishing information to the governor. This is another important provision. The Chief Minister of a state is bound by this article to periodically inform the governor, share all information with the governor regarding the administration of the state, regarding proposals for legislation. Under this article, governor has the powers to call for additional information regarding the affairs of the state and proposed legislations. Governor can ask the Council of Ministers, he can ask the Chief Minister, give me additional information regarding this government policy. Give me additional data regarding this proposed law. And the CM has a duty, a constitutional duty to share that information. The governor can even recommend to the Council of Ministers a matter which has not been decided by a minister to be considered by the Council of Ministers. These powers have been given to the governor to advise the state government, to strike a word of caution when necessary, to provide the right guidance to the state government. And the Chief Minister has a duty here to furnish the required information to the governor. So Punjab's Chief Minister was also breaching his constitutional obligation when he did not share the requested information from the governor's office. So both are at fault. They have breached their constitutional boundaries. They have not respected their constitutional obligation. That is the argument the editorial is making. That is exactly what the Supreme Court observed as well. The Supreme Court said these are high constitutional authorities. The CM's office, the governor's office, they need to respect the constitutional provisions. The editorial says that it's high time that governors and chief ministers start respecting the constitutional boundaries, or else it could lead to a breakdown of center-state relations. So that is what you take away from this important editorial. Now let's move to the third topic. I'll be taking a column from page number 6 that deals with the representation of women in the STEM domain. The representation of women in the STEM domain of education. STEM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering and Mathematics. Right? This is the domain of research and development. The domain of science, mathematics, technology and engineering. A critical domain as far as scientific research is concerned, as far as research and development is concerned. It's a critical domain as far as job creation, economic growth is concerned as well. So in this crucial domain, it's very important for women to play an equal role as well. It's very important to ensure women have equal representation. Unfortunately, in India and as well as around the world, women are inadequately represented in the STEM domain. This is the concern the writers of the column are expressing. There is a popular stereotype in our society, in our orthodox patriarchal societies, not just in countries like India, even in developed nations, even in Western countries. There is a patriarchal mindset. There is a stereotype in the society that maths is not for girls. Many of you might have faced this as well. Your own teachers, your own family members, right? They might have often ridiculed girl students saying maths is not for you. It's for boys. There is always a stereotype in the society, again, not just in India but around the world, that science and maths is something that boys prefer. But humanities and arts is something that girls should prefer. Such a stereotype has developed in most of the societies around the world, and this is the reality as well. On the ground, if you look at the schools, colleges, universities, if you look at the research and development sector, the men in the STEM domain. Now, this is a serious concern that the writers are expressing. So let's look at this important topic in more detail. It's a topic related to social issues and governance as well. So let's examine what the writers are arguing. Let's go beyond the article as well. Let me give you some important statistics with regard to the representation of women in the STEM domain from a global perspective. See, this infographic is very important. It is telling us that according to studies in the field of research and development in science, technology, engineering and mathematics, just around 28.8% of the researchers and scientists are females. Less than 30% is the female representation. The STEM domain, as far as research and development is concerned, it is dominated by males, more than 70%. This is a trend around the world. This is the global average. Now look at the regional distribution. Look at developing countries and developing regions like India, where we have the South Asia, West Asia region. In the South Asia, West Asia region, representation of women in the STEM domain is just 18.5% as far as research and development is concerned. This is not just a problem of developing nations and poor countries, even in developed Western countries as well. Look at North America, look at Europe. Representation of women is very low, just around 32%, 39%. Majority of the workforce in the STEM domain is dominated by the men. The same holds good with regard to education as well in the STEM domain, right from schools, colleges, universities. The participation of women is somewhere in between 22 to 23%. That is the average figure. Over the last 2-3 decades, yes, there has been a slight improvement. More women are enrolling in the science, technology, engineering, mathematics domain, but still the progress is not enough. So what is the problem here? What is the root cause? What's the consequence of this? And what should be done? This is what we need to understand. See, various studies have shown that there is a consistent pattern with regard to this. If you look at the Indian context, the writers of the column, they had conducted a recent study in Indian schools, especially in rural areas. Through this study, they have come out with a consistent pattern that boys are more likely than girls to express a preference for maths and science. Why is this happening? Is it because girls are not capable of understanding and studying maths and science? The answer is clearly no. Why? Because look around you. Women are no way less to men in any domain. If you look at the STEM domain itself, we have had female astronauts, right? We have had top female scientists from Marie Curie to other Nobel laureates. Look at mathematicians like Shakuntala Devi. Look at Indian institutions like ISRO, DRDO, right? Even India's nuclear program, missile program. Female scientists, they dominate the domain. They have a very big representation. So this is not a question of their capability. Women are as capable as men in every domain, not just in STEM, in every domain. However, the ground reality is that in our schools, starting right from our schooling system, boys show a more greater preference towards the STEM domain than girls. Why? This is because of our social and cultural norms. It is our society, our orthodox patriarchal nature of the society, the stereotypes that have been promoted, which has led to a bias against the female child. Starting right from the school days, women are discouraged from the society, from their own parents, from their own family members, from their own teachers. The society teaches them that you are not meant for the STEM domain. You just have to get a degree, take a degree in arts and humanities, get married, right? So there are such cultural stereotypes widely prevalent, not just in India, not just in developing countries, but also in developed societies as well. Studies have established this fact on the ground that in the STEM domain, you find an underrepresentation of women. Is that clear? They're grossly underrepresented, as we saw in the statistics, be it in schools, colleges or universities, be it in the research and development sector, be it in the workforce. In the STEM domain, women are underrepresented not because they lack the capability. They are as capable as men, but because of social cultural norms, because of the biases, the stereotypes that are prevalent in our society, women have been discouraged in the STEM domain. This is a very, very serious issue because this disparity will affect the career prospects of women. It will affect job creation, it will affect economic growth. It will also have socio-economic consequences. In India, the annual Survey of Education report, ASER, which is the most authentic data in the field of education, it has clearly pointed out that in our rural schools, in rural India, boys are outperforming girls in mathematics and science. This stereotype, the bias, has become a reality on the ground. Since the girl child is discouraged in the field, right, they underperform as well. The problem is not just in enrollment. If you look at enrollment, boys prefer the STEM domain more than girls. And because of the continuing discouragement and the stereotype, the biases, the gender inequality, even with regard to their performance in the academic domain, the scores they get in the exams, the understanding of these mathematical science concepts, boys outperform girls, and this is a trend seen across rural India. This has been established through ASER data. However, there is a regional variation. It varies from region to region. This is true with regard to North Indian states, UP, Bihar, etc., where these cultural stereotypes are more widely prevalent, where you have more orthodox societies, where you have more discrimination against women. Boys outperform girls with regard to science and mathematics. But the trend reverses in South India. In South Indian states, girls outperform boys in science and maths. So this clearly proves that this is not a question of their capability. It's not that women are not capable. They are as capable as men, but the only problem is they have been discouraged. The society and the culture, the policies are such that they are discouraged because of the gender inequality in our society. Because of the orthodox patriarchal nature of the society, stereotypes and biases are promoted, which leads to their discouragement. They don't get enrolled in enough numbers, so they are underrepresented. And because of the constant discouragement, they don't perform well as compared to boys. But in more progressive developed societies, they do outperform boys, as seen in South Indian states. On a national average, if you look at the overall performance of India, the performance of girls is much worse than that of boys in the STEM domain. Alright? Now this is something that the government is aware of. It's not that the government does not know that this is happening. There is wide awareness that this is happening because of socio-cultural norms. It's not a question of their ability. This is very clearly established. As I mentioned, there is a widespread prevalence in orthodox patriarchal societies to discourage girls and women. And there is this often said statement that girls are not suited for the STEM domain. This is the stereotype that we need to break. This is a gender bias that needs to be broken. Right? Government policies, they already recognize this. There are many policies of the state government and central government that recognize the gender gap in the STEM domain specifically. Alright? The discrimination, the biases against girl students is clearly recognized. Look at the National Education Policy 2020, for example. It clearly acknowledges the gender gap in schooling and learning, specifically in the STEM domain. It seeks to address this with the right intervention, and it recommends certain measures to be taken to address these social challenges. The focus of National Education Policy is to increase the enrollment of girl students into the schooling system, specifically into the science domain, science and maths domain. Increase their academic performance, bring gender equality between boys and girls. The National Education Policy talks about this. It even provides for gender sensitive training to the teachers. Especially in rural India, teachers are the biggest culprits. Studies have shown this. Teachers are known to discourage girl students if they prefer the science and mathematics domain. Right? So teachers have to be trained. They have to be made gender sensitive. And the National Education Policy even provides for a gender inclusive fund for the states, so that states can spend more in educating the girl child, in pushing the girl child towards the STEM domain. So such policy measures have been initiated. If you look at the National Curriculum Framework for Early Childhood Care and Education, which has been developed by NCERT, even this framework acknowledges the gender disparities in education, specifically in the STEM domain. Is that clear? But however, these policies, these documents, they don't recognize what exactly is causing the gender divide. They don't analyze the long-term consequences. They don't provide the long-term solutions needed to break this gender barrier. This is where the writers say that we should look at a NCERT study that was brought out a few years back, which clearly points out what is the problem. The problem lies in our society. The problem lies in our families. The problem lies with our teachers and schools and colleges. Is that clear? The NCERT study had clearly established this in 2005 itself, that girls are being discouraged from taking maths and science. The patriarchal nature, which pushes discrimination against women, is having an impact on their education in the STEM domain. It's affecting their academic performance. Teachers are not gender sensitive, specifically in the rural areas. So all of this is having a negative impact on the classroom environment. It is reflecting in the final numbers. So that is why we need the right intervention here. The state government, the central government, they need to carry out a targeted intervention to cut this gender stereotyping. We need to introduce behavioral interventions. Since it's a social issue and a cultural issue, we have to carry out behavioral interventions. For example, train the teachers, make them gender sensitive, make them understand that gender does not matter when it comes to studies, when it comes to academics. Carry out interventions specifically in rural areas with focus on families, especially the parents. Make the parents understand, spread awareness about what a girl student can do in the science domain. In the textbooks, in the curriculum itself, promote female achievers in the STEM domain. Bring more case studies related to female scientists, female mathematicians, female astronauts, etc. Project them as role models, right? Bring out their stories, bring out their success, their contributions to the field, and let young girls be inspired by these female role models. These are some small behavioral changes that have to be done at a policy level. The curriculum, the textbooks have to be updated. Teachers have to be trained. The society and the families in general should undergo a change in mindset. This requires a government intervention, a policy intervention, and it calls for targeted behavioral interventions. That is a solution. That is a long-term solution. Is that clear? This is a very important topic. You can even expect an essay topic on this. It's actually a great topic for an essay. Gender inequality in education, gender inequality in the STEM domain, right? So you can prepare on these lines. You can even write an essay and keep it ready based on what we have discussed today. Now moving on to the fourth article from page number 12, it's related to social justice. This article says that the National Commission for Scheduled Tribes, which is a constitutional body, it has called for more information from state governments and union territories regarding the implementation of Forest Rights Act. Is that clear? Forest Rights Act is seen as a landmark legislation with regard to protecting the forest dwelling tribes and other traditional forest dwellers and protecting their traditional cultural rights. The National Commission for Scheduled Tribes, which is responsible for the well-being of the tribal community, is concerned about the poor implementation of this landmark law. It has problems with the forest conservation rules that were recently notified by the Ministry of Environment and Forest under the Forest Conservation Act. It is often said that the Forest Conservation Act, which seeks to protect and conserve our forest and biodiversity, it is in conflict with the Forest Rights Act, which seeks to protect the economic, cultural and social rights of our tribal and forest dwelling communities. These two important laws are in conflict, and the recent rules that the Ministry of Environment Forest notified for forest conservation apparently affects the implementation of Forest Rights Act. So National Commission for Scheduled Tribes had objected to this. It had sought more information from the Environment Ministry, but Environment Ministry refused the allegation and it said forest conservation rules are in line with the Forest Rights Act. The Environment Minister, Union Environment Minister said that the new rules we have notified for forest conservation, it does not violate the forest rights of the tribal communities. This led to a standoff between the Environment Ministry and the National Commission for Scheduled Tribes. So as a result, the National Commission for Scheduled Tribes has directly approached the Supreme Court of India. It has asked the Supreme Court to direct the states and union territories to provide data, to provide more information on how the Forest Rights Act has been implemented across the country. Because the National Commission wants to understand the well-being of the forest dwelling and the tribal communities, and it needs to check whether the forest rights that have been provided under this act is being provided and protected as far as the tribal communities are concerned. So in this context, let's understand a little more about these important laws. Let's understand what the dispute or the conflict is all about. The FRA, Forest Rights Act of 2006. It's a landmark legislation in India. It is aimed at tribal development, protecting the forest-dwelling tribes of India. It was a landmark flagship law that was brought out by the then UPA government, headed by Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. Under this law, the forest rights of forest-dwelling communities, that is forest dwellers, the tribal communities which reside in the forest, the traditional forest dwelling communities, their forest rights has been recognized. It's been recognized as a legal right. Because please understand, in India's forests, especially in central India, northeastern India, in the western Ghats, right, in the eastern Ghats as well, we have many tribal communities, many indigenous communities. They are traditionally forest dwelling communities. They reside in the forest from centuries. Forest is their homeland, and their entire livelihood, their culture, their well-being, everything is dependent on the forest. So most of the indigenous tribes, they have a very close, harmonious, symbiotic relationship with their environment, that is with nature. The tribal communities, they not only reside in forest areas, they draw their livelihood, they draw their basic sustenance from the forests. For example, they collect minor forest produce. They'll collect honey, fruits and berries. They'll collect tobacco leaves or tendu leaves. They sell them in the local markets. That has been their source of revenue, source of livelihood. They take their cattle for grazing inside the forest itself. They practice very basic subsistence animal husbandry. Even the farming, the agriculture they take up is within the forest areas. It is again very minimal subsistence agriculture. These tribal communities, they have immense respect for the forest and biodiversity. Yes, they clear the forest sometimes. They do cut down trees to a small extent to provide for agriculture, to provide for cattle grazing, to provide for their settlements. But however, they don't destroy the forests on a large scale like industries do. So in modern times, this has often led to a conflict. See, please understand that tribal communities are very respectful, very protective of their forests, their surroundings, their environment. They know that their livelihood is coming from the forest. That is one reason why they see a spiritual connection. You might have heard that many tribes, they worship the forest, they worship the trees, they worship the animals and birds, because they know that their well-being, their culture, everything is being protected by the forest. Their livelihood is coming from the forest. So they never over-exploit the forest resources. The exploitation they do is sustainable. It is manageable. They even protect and conserve the forest at a community level. The whole community feels it is their responsibility to protect the forest. Now this age-old traditional relationship between tribal communities and forests was broken by modern forest laws such as the Forest Conservation Act. See, during the colonial period, we had the Indian Forest Act of 1927, which the British had enacted. Under this law, the British broke the basic forest rights of the tribal communities in the name of protecting the forest and in the name of forest conservation. The British administration accused the tribal communities of destroying the forest resources, for harming the environment and biodiversity, and they brought out these laws to strip the tribal communities of their forest rights. But the true intention of the colonial administration was not to protect and conserve the forests. They hardly cared about it. What they cared about was the forest resources. They wanted to monopolize the forest resources for their British enterprises, for their colonial companies. They wanted to keep the tribal communities away, cut off them from their own forest, their own surroundings, and deprive them of their basic traditional rights. Post-independence, we have continued some of the forest conservation laws, but now the concept is different, the mindset, the focus is different. In post-independent India, the focus of forest conservation laws is to genuinely protect the environment in the forest. Because increasing population, increasing urbanization, industrialization, it has put a lot of stress on our forests, on our biodiversity. So the government has brought out a number of environmental laws, including the Forest Conservation Act, to protect the forest resources. These laws, environmental laws, they restrict human activities in forest areas. Human activities are prohibited, in fact, in some of the core areas of the protected areas. For example, if you look at national parks, tiger reserves, biosphere reserves, in the core areas, all human activities are prohibited, including grazing, basic agriculture, dwelling. So many times tribal communities are displaced, they are evicted because of the environmental laws and forest conservation laws. This directly affects their well-being, their livelihood. It weakens their culture, their traditional rights. It breaks the traditional links, the centuries-old link between the tribal communities and the forests. These laws have even become a root cause for the rise of left-wing extremism or Naxalism in the Naxal corridor in central and eastern India. Understood? So to secure these basic rights to the tribal communities, this landmark law was enacted by the then UPA government. It recognizes the traditional rights of the tribes, the forest-dwelling tribes. Basic rights such as the land and title rights is recognized under the law. It means the forest-dwelling communities, they can claim the land to belong to them. They'll be awarded the title rights. They have been recognized with the right to collect minor forest produce. The right to collect minor forest produce, which is a traditional right. The law also recognizes the community right to play a role in conserving the forest. A community role to conserve the forest. The tribe is given the right to conserve and protect the forest. These basic rights are recognized, and it provides for true decentralization because the Gram Sabhas have been empowered under the Forest Rights Act. Gram Sabhas, which are the lowest institutions of governance, the last tier of governance, they have been recognized under the law. They have been given the powers to recognize these basic traditional forest rights of the forest dwelling communities. It gives them land and title rights, which allows them to reside in the forest areas, especially in the buffer zone, if not in the core zone, because core zone is vital for conservation and protection. So tribes which are evicted from there, they will be rehabilitated in the buffer zone or in the transition zones, and they'll be given property rights. Title rights will be given, they can dwell in the forest. They'll be given the right to collect minor forest produce, carry basic grazing and agriculture, and their community right to conserve the forest will be recognized. This is the legal framework created by this important law. It basically upholds the traditional rights of the forest dwelling communities. Now the controversy is that this law runs into direct conflict with the Forest Conservation Act of 1980. Because Forest Conservation Act is focused on protecting our forest resources. It's focused on preventing the loss of biodiversity, protecting the forest lands. So tribal activities is sometimes seen as harmful for the well-being of the forests according to this law. Under this law, human activities such as agriculture, grazing, even collection of minor forest produce could be prohibited in order to protect the forest and the biodiversity. So both the laws are running into conflict. Understood? Forest conservation laws are focused on conserving the forest. Forest Rights Act is focused on protecting the basic rights of the forest dwelling communities. So both these legislations run into conflict, and there are two important issues here. One is conservation of forests, and second is the well-being of the tribal communities. Right? So that is why the National Commission for Scheduled Tribes has taken a personal interest in this issue. recently the Environment Ministry notified a new set of rules under the Forest Conservation Act. New set of forest conservation rules were brought out in 2022. The National Commission for Scheduled Tribes, which is a constitutional authority set up under Article 338A of the Indian Constitution. Please remember, it's a constitutional body. It has been empowered to look after the well-being of the scheduled tribes, to inquire into their well-being, to conduct studies, to investigate the violation of their rights, to recommend policy changes to protect the scheduled tribes in India. So National Commission on Scheduled Tribes has tremendous powers. It has the powers of a civil court. It can directly approach the Supreme Court if it is not getting assistance from the government authorities. All right? It can directly approach the Supreme Court for further assistance. It has the powers of civil court. It can inquire into any issue, any allegation involving the well-being and the safety of the scheduled tribes in India. Based on its findings, it can create a report and it will submit the report to the President of India, who will cause the report to be laid in front of the Parliament. Understood? This National Commission is headed by a chairperson. There is a vice chairperson as well and 3 other members who are appointed by the President of India. So it's a 5-member constitutional body. Usually, the chairperson is a former Supreme Court judge. So this constitutional body has tremendous powers to inquire into such issues. So the National Commission for Scheduled Tribes wanted to further inquire about the new forest conservation rules, but the Environment Ministry refused to cooperate. Environment Ministry said there is no problem with the rules, it is in line with Forest Rights Act. So that is why the National Commission has directly approached the Supreme Court, and through the Supreme Court, it has asked for assistance from all states and union territories, calling for information from them regarding the implementation of Forest Rights Act. It wants to check to what extent title claims have been rejected by the Gram Sabhas and the state governments. They are responsible for implementing the Forest Rights Act. So when the tribal communities have raised their title claims, land claims, the Commission wants to see how many of these applications have been rejected. It wants to check what's the process employed for the rejection, what's the reason given, whether the right action has been taken. Because this has been an issue which is ongoing from the last few years. A few years back, Supreme Court of India had ordered to clear encroachment in the forest areas. Because in certain states, several Gram Sabhas had declared tribal communities, forest-dwelling tribes, as encroachers. This was treated as encroached land. The Supreme Court had ordered to clear all the encroachment, that is to evict the tribal communities from the forests. Later, the Supreme Court corrected its position. It asked the governments not to evict the tribal communities before further inquiry takes place. So this has remained a hot topic. And now the issue has come up again because of the new forest conservation rules. It highlights the conflict between forest conservation and forest rights. Alright, I hope this topic is clear. It's very, very important for your mains. Relevant for environment ecology, relevant for internal security as well, because this conflict is responsible for the rise of left-wing extremism in the tribal belts of India. Now, let's move on to the smaller articles. Let's take a look at the prelims bite section. Let's go through these articles one by one quickly. On page number 10, we have an article related to the S-400 missiles that India is procuring from Russia. So what's the S-400? S-400 is also called the Triumph missile system. It's basically one of the most advanced air defense systems. It can take down aerial threats, incoming enemy aircraft, drones, they can be shot down. Aerial threats can be dealt with. It's a surface to air missile. It comes with a set of advanced radar systems and a battery of missiles, and it's an entirely automated system. It can track multiple aerial targets simultaneously, and it can fire multiple interceptor missiles to intercept any incoming hostile aerial threat. It is meant to protect your air defense, to protect your airspace. It's a crucial weapon platform for India. We are looking to deploy this against Pakistan and China. So, a few years back, we signed a historic contract with Russia to procure 5 regiments of S-400. But this deal ran into a controversy because the US objected to it. The United States has a law called CAATSA, Countering America's Adversaries Through Sanctions Act. Under this law, the US has declared Russia, Iran and North Korea as the adversaries of the United States. They have been placed under primary sanctions, Russia, Iran and North Korea. Other countries who trade with these three countries, in the oil and defense domain especially, they will be placed under secondary sanctions. For example, if India were to procure oil from Iran, if you were to procure weapons from North Korea, procure weapons from Russia, India would be facing the risk of secondary sanctions under CAATSA. So the US threatened India with sanctions when the S-400 deal was signed with Russia. For India, it's a critical air defense platform meant to enhance our air defense against both Pakistan and China. But India-Russia proceeded with the deal. Despite the US opposition and the threat of CAATSA sanctions, we went ahead and signed the deal as well, and Russia even began delivering the S-400 missiles to India. Especially after the war broke out last year, after Russia invaded Ukraine, Russia came under crippling economic sanctions placed by the Western countries. This made it all the more difficult. First of all, there was the threat from CAATSA sanctions, but US never invoked the sanctions against India. On the other hand, Turkey had procured the similar S-400 missiles from Russia, but US had placed secondary sanctions on Turkey under CAATSA. But thanks to close relations between India and US as of now has not imposed any secondary sanctions on India for procuring the S-400. So along with the problems created by CAATSA, the Russia-Ukraine war and the Western sanctions on Russia cut off Russian banks and Russian companies from the global financial markets. It was cut off from the SWIFT payment system. So India found it difficult to pay for the missiles, but however, after the war started, Russia started shipping the missiles to India. Despite the Western sanctions, despite the Western stand against it, Russia went ahead and delivered 3 regiments, and we have already deployed them in the north, west and east. Towards the northern, western and eastern borders, 1 regiment each has already been inducted by India. We have started paying for these missiles through alternate payment systems. We have worked out a rupee-ruble arrangement. We have bypassed the dollar system to ensure that the sanctions do not affect this important deal. So 3 regiments have already been supplied and 2 more regiments will be supplied by 2024. This is what the article is saying. By early next year, the remaining 2 regiments will also be delivered to India, and thereby Russia will complete its promise. All the 5 regiments will be delivered, which is crucial for India's air defense against Pakistan and China. Understood? Next. The challenge posed by drones along India's borders. This has become a frequent threat. Is that clear? There is an article here which talks about a drone which was shot down in Punjab along the India-Pakistan border, along the international border between India-Pakistan in the Punjab sector. It was shot down in December 2022, around 2 months back. After shooting down the drone, the BSF, which is the border guarding force along the India-Pakistan border, carried out a thorough examination of the drone along with other agencies, other security agencies. They have managed to get into the GPS data to figure out where the drone came from, and the data clearly shows that the drone was flying extensively in Pakistan for several months in 2022. Before this, the location data shows that it was in China near Shanghai in the early part of 2022. So what does this indicate? It indicates that these cheap quadrocopter drones or these small micro drones, they are often manufactured by Chinese companies. This Chinese drone has been procured by Pakistan, and Pakistan's agencies have been using these drones to breach our border security. And what do they do with it? They use the drones to deliver drugs, arms and weapons in order to fund extremist terrorist activities in India. Specifically in Punjab, the ISI of Pakistan is looking to revive the Khalistan movement. Over the last several years, we are seeing a deliberate attempt in India and around the world to revive the dormant Khalistan movement. And of late, such drone incursions have gone up along the Punjab border, even along the line of control in Jammu and Kashmir. These cheap Chinese drones are procured by Pakistan, especially by its agencies, intelligence agencies like the ISI or by the Pakistani army. They are using this enabling organized criminals and terror groups to smuggle drugs and weapons across the border into India, because drones can easily fly across the border and land this contraband, which is later taken over by the extremists operating on the Indian side. The BSF has shot down many such drones. Today, the BSF, other border guarding forces of India and the Indian Army, they're actively looking to procure anti-drone technologies. There are various anti-drone technologies available. You can physically shoot down a drone, right? You can capture a drone, you can intercept the communication system of a drone, and you can disable it and you can bring it down. So India is looking at such anti-drone technologies. The BSF currently is shooting down these drones, and we thoroughly analyze them. We look at the flight data, and BSF has figured out that the drone came from Pakistan for sure. And the drone was manufactured in China. There is very clear evidence to indicate this. So drones, especially the smaller drones, have become a serious threat for border security, and our security and intelligence agencies are trying to cope with the threat. They're trying to deal with the threat. Next, the Press Council of India is in news on page number 11. The Press Council of India has warned against the publication of paid news in newspapers. See, paid news is a huge menace. What is paid news? Paid news is basically advertisements which are disguised as a news item. Now see, if you read the Hindu newspaper, if you look at this article, immediately you'll understand it's a news article. So it should be a factual article based on facts, based on truth. But advertisements are clearly listed separately. The moment you look at an ad in a newspaper, you'll get to know, because they are designed in a different way. It's clearly mentioned it's an advertisement. You can see this on social media as well, right? Influencers, they say that this is a paid partnership. It means it's a sponsored ad. Now, what if the publisher enters into a deal with a political party or with any interested individual? They publish a favorable, friendly article praising this individual, this party, this organization, this company, and they have taken money in return. It's essentially a paid ad, but they're disguising it as a news article. Let's say there is a newspaper which publishes an article praising a politician, praising a political party right before elections. This politician, this party would have paid for this. It's an advertisement. But the newspaper, the publishers have disguised it as a news item. They're not showing it as an advertisement. The readers, they'll think it's actual facts. They'll believe that these are the achievements of the leader and the party. They might change their voting preference. They might go and vote for this politician. This leads to destabilization of electoral democracy. It derails free and fair elections in the country. So paid news is a serious menace as far as elections are concerned. It's also an internal security threat, because paid news can be used for propaganda by hostile interests, by extremist groups, extremist organizations, hostile countries, right? Even they can pay for news items which are basically paid advertisements, and this becomes a serious menace. This highlights the role of misuse of media in creating security challenges as well. That's why the topic is relevant for polity and also internal security. So when it comes to paid news in newspapers, in print media, it is the Press Council of India which is the regulatory authority. Press Council of India is responsible for regulating the print media. Understood? It's a statutory body. It has legal backing. It was established in 1966. And through the Press Council Act of 1978, it has been given statutory backing. These important facts are very essential for your prelims. You can get a question on Press Council of India. The Press Council of India is comprised of a chairman, who is usually a retired Supreme Court judge. And it also consists of 28 members, including representatives from the Parliament, from Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha, representatives from the print media, journalists, publishers, editors, etc., and also eminent personalities from civil society. Collectively, there are 28 members with a chairman. The chairman is a retired Supreme Court judge. This acts as a regulatory body, promotes the ethical code of conduct. It promotes a code of conduct for journalism. It places restrictions on paid news and fake news in newspapers. Alright, the chairman of this statutory body is chosen by the chairperson, by the chairman of Rajya Sabha, Speaker of Lok Sabha, and a member of the Press Council of India. This is the selection body which selects the chairman of the Press Council of India. So please know the basic facts, the composition, the role and the functions of the Press Council. You can expect a prelims question here. You should also know what is paid news, what's the threat and concern associated with paid news. Now coming to another article from page 14, it refers to PMI, the Purchasing Managers Index. This data has been brought out, and according to February's PMI data, there is a steady expansion going on in India's manufacturing sector. So what is the PMI index? That is a basic fact you need to know for your prelims. The Purchasing Managers Index. This is seen as a key economic indicator. It's an indicator of growth in the manufacturing sector especially. Alright? It indicates any slowdown because this index is tracking the purchasing indents which are being placed by purchasing managers in the industries, in the factories. Alright? The data, the index is developed through a survey. A monthly survey is conducted by few institutions. There are 3 institutions which bring out this index. They conduct a periodic survey, a monthly survey is done, where they look at the expenditure of the industries, the factories. What is the raw material they are purchasing? What is the capital cost they are investing? This will help you understand what is the output. That will help you understand the demand in the economy. So that is why PMI index is a key indicator of economic growth or economic slowdown. Depending on what the purchasing managers are purchasing in the factories, industries, you can predict how the cycle will be for the next month, for the next quarter. You can understand how the economy is performing. If the demand is going down, if economy is slowing down, right? Factories will produce less. So purchasing managers will place lesser orders for raw materials. So that indicates a slowdown in the economy. If the economy starts to boom, if there is a sudden growth in demand, automatically industries will increase their output. To increase their production, they need more raw materials. They'll place more orders. The purchasing managers will purchase more on a monthly basis. So this index tracks this data, the data at the level of purchasing managers. This index is brought out by the Institute of Supply Management, the Singapore Institute of Purchasing and Materials Management, and IHS Market Group, which was recently procured by S&P Global, Standard & Poor Global, which is a major credit rating agency in the world. These institutions bring out the PMI index, the monthly purchasing manager index. It helps you understand how the economy is performing in general, especially how the manufacturing sector is performing. All right? This is what you need to know. Now, the last point in my discussion, I want to give you a heads up. Under the heads up section, I want you to understand the challenges India is facing under its G20 presidency. Today, we have multiple articles in the newspaper related to India's G20 presidency. No doubt this is a great opportunity for India to show global leadership, to try and find solutions to global issues like inflation, the slowdown in the economy, the Russia-Ukraine war, etc. However, there are many challenges, many hurdles for India which is becoming very evident. Right? I told you at the beginning of the session when we discussed the first topic, there are many ministerial meetings, many working groups which are going on in India across the country in many cities. In every meeting, there are many conflicts and issues coming up. And the primary conflict is between Western countries led by US on one side and Russia on the other side, even China. This geopolitical divide has become very evident. It is affecting any successful outcome at the G20 meetings. For example, recently in Bengaluru, the finance ministers meeting took place. No joint statement was brought out. There was no unified joint statement because of a divide between Western countries and Russia. Right now, as we speak, the foreign ministers meeting is going on in Delhi. It's going to conclude today. India is struggling for a joint consensus, to build consensus amongst all the members. But there is a clear divide between Western countries and Russia and China. Western countries want Russia to be blamed for the Ukraine war. They want sanctions to be strictly enforced and followed by everyone. But India, as we know, it has bypassed the sanctions. We have taken a neutral stand in the conflict, and indirectly we have backed Russia's position. Right? So this geopolitical divide between Western countries, Russia and China, is creating a serious challenge for India to build consensus during the G20 meetings. This is something we need to look forward to, because in the coming months there will be many more G20 meetings in India till September. The final summit will happen in September. So India has a huge task ahead, right? There are many big global challenges, the Russia-Ukraine war, the US-China Cold War, then the sanctions against Russia, then you also have the global economic situation. All these are very serious hurdles for India because right now it's a test of India's leadership. Many are criticizing India for failing to achieve consensus, right? So before we get to the summit, the G20 summit, we need to strike consensus. We need to convince all these parties to set aside their differences to work towards a global common good. That is a challenge for India. This is the heads up I want to give you. So please track the developments in these G20 meetings. They'll be frequently reported in newspapers. All right. On this note, I bring my discussion to an end. Please take a look at the mains practice questions. It's based on what we have discussed. I expect you to write these answers, post your answers in the answer writing portal for which the link has been given in the description. I hope it was a good, fruitful session. Immediately head to the Telegram channel, subscribe to our Telegram channel using the link because we are going to have a quiz on these topics on our Telegram channel. It will help you revise all the topics. And also don't forget, today at 8 p.m. we'll have a live session on YouTube as part of our Target Prelims crash course. Right? This is an ongoing crash course which we have started yesterday. Find the details again in the description at the start of the video. And we really hope you make the full benefit, you take the full benefit of these free crash course sessions. So do let me know how this class went. I hope it was good. I hope you understood everything. I'll see you again tomorrow. Till then, take care. Have a good day.